Washington State Legislator Comrade Japal. She introduced a bill that is going to allow homeless people to live for free indefinitely on federal land that you, the taxpayers, own. You feel good about that? I don't either. Let's get into it. Here we go.
Punishing unhoused people does nothing to reduce homelessness or address its root causes. In fact, it's been proven to be counterproductive and make homelessness even worse. Last year, homelessness increased by 18%, and it makes
Build it and they will come. Where are the areas that homelessness has increased 18%? Bet you anything. Big blue liberal cities, that number is greater than other cities who have laws on the books prohibiting public camping by homeless folks just wherever within their community. Communities that have that, they're pushing people away. So you're going to have the haves, lots of homeless, and the have-nots. They don't want the homeless. They're working on ways to provide shelter, but they're not saying, hey, it's okay.
No sense to criminalize these people as the cost of housing continues to skyrocket.
So now we're blaming cost of housing. These are people a lot of times that have made decisions to be homeless because it's easier to run around and do drugs than it is to go to a job.
You literally can't afford a one-bedroom apartment on a minimum wage salary anywhere in this country. Now more than ever, we have to stand up and protect the rights of homeless individuals. My legislation would do just that, preventing federal agencies and contractors from imposing civil or criminal punishments on homeless persons while conducting what are called life-sustaining activities like eating or sleeping.
All right, let's talk about that for 1 second. What about doing drugs? What about sex crimes? What about human trafficking? What about sex trafficking? What about purchasing stolen goods? What about buying and selling stolen vehicles? What about buying and selling stolen bikes? What about littering? What about rape? What about all the other activities that we know? What about burning somebody else's tent down? What about stabbings? All of those things happen in homeless communities, and that's why so many cities have said no. We've just had the 1-year anniversary of the grants passed versus whomever that basically said, hey, even if you don't have enough housing, you can still ask people to not camp in your neighborhood as urban campers. Let's keep going.
Here's the thing. If we want fewer people sleeping outside, we should focus on and invest in real solutions to homelessness, like housing and support.
Now, you give housing to a homeless person that's on drugs. Now they're just doing their drugs in private. They don't have actually the support system of a whole bunch of people living in tents that all have Narcan, because you got to Narcan yourself up every now and then so you don't die. So is housing really what people need? Now, they need to be going into treatment. They need to be going into mental health care treatment, or they need to go to jail. Those are their 3 options. And one of those you're going to have to pick and go with it, because you can't just live willy-nilly wherever. So it might be a combination of all 3.
Not by passing backwards laws that make the issue even worse. When we throw people in jail and fine them thousands of dollars for not having a place to live, in what world?
It's never because they're just camping. It's because they're doing a bunch of other criminal, illegal activities. It's not that hard to figure out. You know, it's like everybody wants to say, well, ICE only goes after, the moms and the hardworking dads. They're not going after no, they're going after criminal illegals. Same drill. You're just different semantics.
Does that make sense? Research has even shown that when people experiencing homelessness are forced to spend time in prison, they leave poorer due to lost belonging.
That's not just homeless people. That's everybody. You committed a crime. You're going to have to pay your dues to society. That's what happens. And when you're talking about they lose their belongings, you know what? I hear about this all the time. Oh, I lost my belongings. How many times were you warned that a sweep was coming of your encampment? Well, probably about a dozen. Okay, why didn't you move? Oh, I was too busy out getting drugs. Oh, so this is supposed to be society's problem? You couldn't get your ass in gear to clear out your stuff, and you lost your passport, you lost your whatever, you lost your ID because the cops came in after telling you for the 10 millionth time, hey, you can't live here? And then they actually do something and you're all up in arms about, oh, they took my stuff. Well, you know what? God helps those who help themselves. That's what I'd say right there.
And they're often in worse health. We have to do better than the 225 bills further targeting and criminalizing homelessness that have been introduced across the country since the grants passed to 160 of which have become law.
Yep.
Better than Trump and Republicans' budget, which will cut healthcare and food assistance while giving handouts to billionaires and giant corporations. Poverty is
Thanks, comrade.
A failing of individuals. It is a policy failure.
And so policy failure seems to be the greatest in big blue liberal cities, doesn't it? Yeah, because out in the rural communities, you don't have a high degree of homelessness. Why is that? Well, because the homeless depend on handouts because you've conditioned them by giving them handouts. Yeah, you go to that service there, you go get your food there, get your health care there, you get your teeth done there. You know, they have this long laundry list. Go take your free shower there, your free food over there, your free tent. You've conditioned them in these big blue liberal cities. You don't see that in the rural areas. You don't see that in red states. They do not build it and they will come. They don't have that philosophy. Instead, they have the laws saying, hey, we'll help you get to a shelter. Hey, we'll help you get to jail if need be. We'll help you get to mental health care facility. We'll help you get wherever you can, but you can't be here. You can't just be hanging out in the park, doing your drugs, doing your sex things, doing your crazy stuff, stolen goods, whatever it might be. Can't do that.
It is a failure of politicians who put the interests of the rich over those of poor and working people.
Nah, it's the failure of liberals in big blue Democratic cities, because that's where the vast majority of your homeless takes place. Period. So, you know, do all the rah you want to do. Communist is great. But you gotta kind of look at where the actual data is, which is these cities that have promoted, hey, we're a great state, we're a great city, we're a great county to be homeless. You've built it and they have come and they're going to stay and you're stuck with it.
Arresting people who cannot afford to live will only push them further into poverty. There are real solutions to combat homelessness. Criminalization is not one of them. Cruelty.
Nope. If you break the law, it is. If you break the law, it is. Prison is an option. Jail is an option. It just is, because that's housing. Got a roof over your head. That's housing. Yeah.
Will not solve the problem. The grants passed decision was a disastrous ruling.
Disagree. It was much needed. You've coddled the homeless for so long that they've taken over large stretches of North American cities. Skid Row. The Tenderloin. Need I say more? No.
Let states and localities throw people in jail just for sleeping outside.
It's not for sleeping outside. It's for doing drugs. It's for having sex outside in front of children. It's for buying and selling stolen goods. You know, I can just keep on going. It's for living in squalid conditions. It's for Shigella outbreaks where you've got man-on-man sex and nobody washing their hands and, you know, just this crazy diarrhea thing goes around. I mean, that's a known quantity in the homeless industrial complex.
Even if they have nowhere else to go, it allows for the destruction of encampments, which means throwing out IDs and other documents that people need to live, find an apartment, or get a job.
If you can't take care of your documents that you need to live, that's on you. That's on you. You got to figure this out. You got to be an adult. You can't have other people wiping your ass literally 24/7. And that's what the homeless expect. Just, I want to do drugs all day. This is the greatest thing ever, greatest country ever. Portland, Seattle, LA, thank you so much. San Francisco, you guys have been great. I'm just running around doing my homeless thing. And nobody gives a rat's ass. And especially when you've got politicians like this, that literally you can see her angle.
This is the definition of cruel and unusual punishment. Punishing unhoused people does nothing to reduce homelessness.
Punishing citizens who are hardworking and tax-paying by allowing homeless to sleep in parks, to shoot up, to do all the crazy stuff, to buy and sell stolen goods, to live in communities that are meant for children to play in, that are meant for people to be able to walk through, but can't because of the piles of garbage, because of the lunatics that are in these homeless encampments. Tell me how that is a solution. Yeah, so what you've got is you've got homes, not handcuffs. Like it's one or the other, right? Well, you got to give them a home or you got to give them handcuffs. And but this is the basis for which these people pivot from. They're communists. They want to, provide for everybody, and you can't, especially in a big city like Seattle where housing is so expensive. There's going to be people that just flat can't afford to live here, and they're going to have to be fully subsidized in order to make that happen. And you know what I say? Nah, we don't need to do that. These folks need to take some responsibility. And if they are so mentally incapacitated because of their addiction or their mental health care issues, then they need to be in treatment or mental health care treatment. One of those two options, because again, those are housing. You got a roof over your head. Feels heartbreaking to me, Japal said. Comrade said she represents Washington's 7th Congressional District, which includes most of Seattle. Because I don't think that homelessness is a failure of the individual. I think it's a failure of the system. Blame the system, the faceless system. I think it's a failure of our policymaking. Agreed, it is. It's a failure of big, blue, Democrat-led policy. Japal's bill would prevent a federal agency from imposing penalties on homeless people. They use federal land to conduct life-saving activities, including accepting food and water, or storing personal belongings. Can you see anybody coming along? Can you see DHS coming along and just really tackling somebody because they're accepting food and water or they're storing personal belongings? No, that's not happening. But squatting on land, doing a bunch of drugs, doing a bunch of crazy willy-nilly stuff, yeah, that happens all the time because that's what homeless communities are all about. When there is no adequate alternative indoor space available, most of these folks don't want indoor space because they want to be able to do their drugs. There's no accountability out in these homeless encampments. So, Supreme Court's 6-3 opinion on Grants Pass case last year eliminated the requirement when it ruled it was not cruel and unusual punishment for sleeping outside, even if there were no alternative places to go. Not cruel and unusual. And that kind of says it all. Hey, you've crossed a line here. We think you've crossed that line. You can't have homeless people just living wherever, willy-nilly. That's a hard no-go. I worry unless this act gets passed, we're just going to be in this awful cycle of eviction, homelessness, and prison. Now, maybe throw in treatment and mental health care in there. And you're basically describing the homeless industrial complex. The bill would only have jurisdiction over federally owned or leased lands, leaving states and cities to continue to do as they please. But Japal said that she is hopeful it would set a precedent for other places to follow. Now, what she's not considering is that a lot of places don't want to have just a whole bunch of homeless folks, urban campers in their midst. They don't want that. As shocking as I know that may sound, because, the whole thing is just Well, where do you want these people to go? Because they can't be in the parks. They can't be on federal land. You can't just live wherever. That's a hard no-go. I don't know how to get that through people's heads. Is, you know what? You got to do the best you can, get people the resources they can, but you got to make it clear you can't just live wherever the F you want, because that is not how this works. However, many state and local officials in the West supported the Supreme Court's decision and remain resistant to any limits to their power to remove and arrest people from living outside. Now, when's the last time you heard me doing an effing podcast about somebody who got arrested for just being homeless? You know, I'd be all over that. I mean, I'd just right on it, right? I mean, we'd be talking about that. So how often does that happen? Every now and then? Do I podcast every now and then on that? Have you ever heard me in daily podcasting now for 5-6 years? Have you ever heard me talking about homeless people getting arrested for strictly being homeless, for strictly being in an urban camping setting where they didn't have any place else to go? And that's all they were doing, was just living there. No. You know why? Because that doesn't happen. They're always arrested for a bunch of other stuff, outstanding warrants, criminal charges for this, criminal charges for that, probation violations. I mean, you name it. That's what they're arrested for. Derek Young and the Washington State Association of Counties, a lobbying group for county officials, said a federal law would not account for circumstances at unique locations. Having the flexibility to respond appropriately if conditions become unsafe is critical. Homeless encampment removals on federal land are fairly common. It's common for the National Park Service to intervene when people set up tents or tarps on federal land in Washington, D.C. Staff with the U.S. Forest Service removed dozens of people from a national forest in Central Oregon this spring to prepare it for debris clearing. And they were told to stand down. The people that were basically clearing out the encampment, they got into it with the protesters. And, words were spoken and somebody maced somebody else. They felt threatened by some lunatic in a tent doing drugs. Shocker, I know. And they gave him a little spray to the face, just a little pepper spray right to the eyeballs. Hey, back off, homeless person on drugs. Tssst. Their actions came after the Trump administration issued an executive order telling federal agencies to increase timber production and forest management projects. You can't do that if you got homeless people urban camping in the federal forests. Now, can you? No. One or the other, homelessness or develop those forests. So in the current Republican-controlled House and Senate, don't you love hearing that? I really do. And presidency and Supreme Court. The chance of this bill by Comrade Japal progressing is tough under the current political climate. Said Democratic Representative Maxwell Frost, co-lead on the bill. He represents Central Florida, a state that has seen a large spike in homelessness in recent years. Good weather, and they've got a massive population. But it doesn't mean we don't introduce it and work on it. You know what I constantly keep hearing is where politicians are describing something that hasn't turned out very good. Just like the optics are just horrific. And you know what they oftentimes say is, yeah, it's not looking good. I mean, good Lord, can you believe this is a situation that we're in? Wow. I mean, this is really a tough negative scenario because there's no real ability to solve this problem. So let's just go with, we've got a lot of work to do. I mean, really kind of just really passing the buck. Yep. Our efforts on this individual issue have absolutely sucked. You know what? And we got a lot of work to do. I have great concern about this bill going through. We have work to do. It's like, yeah, no kidding. We've all got work to do. It's called life. It's called whatever we're doing for a living. It's called whatever we're just doing as human beings. We've got work to do. But to make that an excuse for why things haven't gone the way that you thought that they would go, because your policy doesn't match up to reality. And the policy here is just allowing people to live on federal lands willy-nilly, and we'll see how that works out. So this is what Washington state legislators are working on, while you're paying their salaries, is they are literally working on ways for people to become homeless and have zero repercussions within the federal forestry scenario. So, make that make sense. Make that make sense. But in Washington state, people love Comrade Pramila, or however you say her first name. I don't even know how to say her last name, nor do I really care. It's kind of like, whatever. We'll just call her Comrade, because that's the direction she's going in. And there's a lot of work to be done. A lot of work. Lot of work. All right. That's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for being here. Catch up with you in the next one. Love to have you subscribe. Hit that notification bell. We drop 2 videos Monday through Friday, one on Saturday, one on Sunday. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.